All right, everybody is already seated or in the process of getting seated. So welcome everyone to our Manufacturing Industry Forum. My name is Shiv Terzal. I head up the GTM activities for the manufacturing vertical here. So before we get started, I would like to play a contest and ask a question as to how long have I been here? And that's a question I'll ask you guys when I end. So you tell me how long I've been at Databricks, and I'll ask that question at the end. So keep that in mind, and as we go through the day, or the 90 minutes that we have together, you can tell me your guess, and we'll do a little over-under on that action, all right? So with that, I'm very excited to be here. Awesome summit. It's always good to meet with customers, some old friends, making some new friends, meeting our partners and fellow Bricksters. So what an awesome summit it has been already. And our CEO, Ali Ghodsi, says, this is the biggest data and AI event on the planet. I like to take it a step further and like to say that this is the biggest data and AI event in the universe. And you know why I do that? Because if we are wrong, then it would require people and citizens of other planets to come out and prove us wrong. That's the fastest way to find aliens amongst us. Patent pending. So before we begin, just a quick point. I was actually not scheduled to do this. So my boss, Rob Saker, who I think many of you may know or have heard from in the past, unfortunately had health issues on Sunday night and could not make it into San Francisco. So he said, Shiv, how about you take the keynote and the panel and everything that comes in between? And I'm like, sure, Rob. I'm happy to do it. So before we get started, I just want to wish Rob a speedy recovery. We miss him here. He's such an awesome leader. He's been so engaged with the customer base, both for retail and manufacturing, and built a great team here. So we really wish him a speedy recovery and hope to see him very soon back in action. So to orient everyone towards our time together here, we have about 90 minutes. I'll kick it off, and we'll talk a little bit about our point of view on what's happening in AI and manufacturing. We'll talk a little bit about how the Lakehouse architecture, so the theme for this entire event, this entire week, is Destination Lakehouse. But what does Lakehouse mean for manufacturing? What does the architecture and what does the ecosystem bring to you as manufacturing industry constituents? Then I'd like to announce the winners and finalists for our Data Team Awards, which is obviously very exciting because it's always good to recognize people in the industry who are doing excellent work with data and AI and creating really value-creative outcomes. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'll hand it over to Muthu, who will talk about the digital transformation journey that he's been working on at Honeywell, his learnings, and what his views of the future of AI in manufacturing look like. And then we'll have an expert panel where we have experts from Raytheon, John Deere, and Honeywell. So collectively, just about $350 billion in market capitalization. So at this scale, when you do digital transformation, boy, things are hard. But when you get it right, you're such a leading influence on the industries that they operate in. So we're very lucky to have Peter, Amy, and Muthu here with us, and just a round of applause for them making the time as we get started. And after that, like any other thing we would do for the industry lounges, there is a reception and happy hour after we wrap up. So I encourage all of you to come have a drink with all of us. Yes, that's Mr. Savage, yes. So that is going to be even more fun. So you get the opportunity to meet with your industry peers, our partners from AtScale, Avanade, and Tredence, as well as the lively bunch that are known as Bricksters, so you'll always meet them. So yeah, so with that, I'll get started. Talk a little bit about trends in manufacturing within what we are seeing. So this is a really interesting stat. There's about a dozen reports, but I feel like this report was probably the most definitive in the way that they analyzed the potential value for artificial intelligence and data in different sectors. So if you take a look at the data behind this, the value for AI in manufacturing is $1 trillion plus. So you heard that right. It's trillion with a T, right? And if you compare that, and this is kind of counterintuitive, is if you compare that with retail and financial services, it's about 2 to 3 times that. And this is a really cool thing. And if you look at the data behind this, and we saw the customers that we are working with in manufacturing vertical within Databricks who have adopted the lakehouse paradigm and the architecture, they outperform their industry peers within manufacturing by a factor of 2.5x in terms of generating return on invested capital growth. So the data on this is very, very clear that people who are leaning into the lakehouse architecture and the paradigm are winning, are generating more returns as a result of turbocharging their own data and AI strategies. So manufacturers, overall, if you look at where they're getting their gains, they're getting it all across the value chain, right? So if you look at supply chain, which is a super hot topic because you've heard so much about that in the news, we're all watching the same things. You've heard about how the supply chain challenges have impacted the industry and the economy at large. But the smarter firms, the people who are adopting data and AI, are using modeling techniques to predict and avoid stockout situations, do better inventory replenishment, and positioning of inventory to support a global customer base. That's what sets them apart from others, and that's the kind of results that they're seeing within their operations. Now, you look at customer service, that's another area where you see tremendous opportunity for gains, not just through automation, providing a better customer experience, but also looking at how do you really drive those data-driven innovation into their service support processes, and that drives not only a better customer experience, but also translates into real bottom line gains. So I can talk at length about sustainability, but what we've seen, 30% improvements in waste reduction, a completely step change in energy efficiency, that's helping our customers be more sustainable businesses and develop more sustainable products and services in the future. But to me, the most exciting part is the foundation data and AI provides to unlock new business models. That's the true data-driven innovation that excites me, and you see a lot of that going on. So that ranges from shared equipment as a service. That is something that we see a lot more in the industrial equipment space, and data plays a key role in being able to execute a strategy like that. You look at connected services, and more importantly, have a lot of innovative value propositions to the customer, which were otherwise not possible without the use of data and AI. At the same time, we're barely scratching the surface in manufacturing, which is why I believe the upside is so high, because only 30% of projects actually make it to production. If you look at the survey we just commissioned, and this is something that's really hot off the presses, 70% of data and AI projects within manufacturing don't move past proof of concept stage. And what are some of the challenges that our customers are citing? They feel managing massive amounts of OT and IT data, this is the convergence that is required between operational technology and IT systems that have historically been siloed, is proving to be a big block that needs to be overcome. Cybersecurity is consistently stated as another challenge, and on top of that, which this is no points for guessing, employee skills and technical knowledge, which is somewhat different from the traditional manufacturing skill set. At the same time, what I would like to talk about, in view of these challenges, I'd like to talk about the lakehouse approach for manufacturing. So it's built on an open source foundation. You heard that over the last 2 days. But it's also providing a full range of tools, not just to do data governance and data cataloging, but also drive an integrated approach towards BI and even advanced analytics in AI and ML. So that's something that provides a comprehensive way of solving some of the challenges that you were hearing our customers cite. Oops. So the things I wanted to really focus on are real-time decisions, but I wanted to point out the advantages of having a lakehouse approach is the fact that you don't have to do it all by yourself. So real-time data is certainly something possible with the lakehouse platform. We provide tremendous amounts of performance advantages that were not there, or you've seen enough presentations over the last 2 days about how we have a performance advantage in terms of data streaming and structured streaming. But the more important thing is the flexibility that the platform provides you. Now, if you want to go build and have a POC by yourself, that's something that we offer as solution accelerators. I think we have about 50 plus out-of-the-box solution accelerators that you can implement in your environment using the lakehouse infrastructure that you've already invested in to drive some really powerful proof of concepts, as well as deliver real-world out-of-the-possible savings to your businesses to say, hey, I want to take data and AI and apply it to my processes and my business models. This is something that you could do out of the box as soon as you have the lakehouse environment and the infrastructure within your environments. And the key part of being lakehouse architecture and being on the lakehouse architecture is the flexibility that it provides to you, right? So we also integrate with a number of partner solutions that are proven in production. Some things that you've been using can also integrate within the lakehouse architecture as well. So all in all, I think the big thing here is it's an exciting time for data and AI in manufacturing. It is something that I'm very passionate about. I'm very happy to see such a big audience and such awesome panelists to make time for this. With that sentiment, I'll move on and talk a little bit about data team winners. So first, I'll recognize the finalists. So we have Rivian Automotive, that was a data team finalist for the disruptive innovation category. So you've all heard Rivian and what they've done in the electric vehicle space. So congratulations to the Rivian Automotive team for being noted as the data team that has done the most and the best disruptive innovation through data and AI. Second, I'd like to recognize Corning. That is something that we have seen over and over again as the work that they do to democratize their enterprise system data and make it available to business units is super awesome. And I think a lot of other customers want to do that. And I think Corning set the example for that. And American Airlines, our last finalist in terms of being a visionary in making data from all different solutions available in a simple stack. That's something that I think is super awesome and truly visionary in the airline industry. So congratulations to Rivian Automotive, Corning, and American Airlines for being this year's data team finalists. Above all, we have to name the winner, and this is where applause is necessary, is Toyota. Toyota has been so awesome with everything, but especially in the application of data and AI, they've truly been the winner for this year's Data Team Award. So congratulations to the Toyota Motor Co-op team. I hope we have those guys here, but if you are here, please raise your hands because people would love to know. There you go. Congratulations, guys. All right, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Muthu, who will be talking through digital transformation in manufacturing. So Muthu, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Muthu Sabaratnam. I lead enterprise analytics globally for Honeywell, responsible for driving adoption of AI, ML in the company. Also, our Honeywell Forge analytic products. So very happy to be here. I'm never early. My team is here. They know that. I'm kind of late, usually for everything. I came a little early thinking it's 3 o'clock. It was actually a good thing to have the time wrong. And nobody was here, so I'm telling Shiv, hey, just had a good lunch, beer's waiting. Looks like we can wrap up, right? Well, but thank you for being here. I know it's that time of the day that we want to make sure we are engaged. But the topic is very interesting, right? Isn't it? Like this is such a passionate topic because everywhere you go, who doesn't want to do AI, right? Who doesn't want to do analytics? It's just such a passionate topic. So I'm hopeful we'll have a great conversation. And there is a great panelist here waiting again, Amy and Peter. So I think we're going to have a great time. So. All right. So Honeywell first. All of you probably see us on the thermostats. We are a lot bigger than that. Pretty much every commercial and defense airlines that you would see, we have our products all the way from cockpit systems to engines. We manufacture fighter gear, safety equipment, all the way to mobile devices and warehouse automation systems. We are in 90% of the new buildings that comes live with our control systems on the back end, so that controls the HVAC most likely, the AC, the chillers, the fans, in every commercial building and homes too these days. We also have a huge presence in chemicals, and every refinery in the world has our products and software for more than 40 years. So it's been it's a great place in terms of use cases. That's the best part for AI and data. About 2018 and plus, we created our software division to just take advantage of all of these domain spaces we play in. Because what is two things that's eating the world? Anybody want to have an answer? Technology-wise? Software, thank you. What's the other one that's eating the world? AI. Thank you. And that's what that's all about. So it's basically, we believe strongly that creating great software with our domain knowledge, with intelligent operations, which is basically based on AI, you can skim a lot of value from operations. And we see this every day, and it's a very exciting topic, and I think you're going to hear the same thing from Collins and John Deere here, who are also leaders in the space. So that's what the software division is all about. And in Honeywell, we care about a couple of things. Absolutely sustainability and environment. We have a lot of products we've always had. We've declared carbon neutrality by 2035. We invest more than 50% of our NPI products are all geared towards sustainability. Solstice Chemical, that we have just one product, has saved HFCs in the world worth of 42 million cars on the road per year. I mean, that's just that product being in all of the coolants in your air conditioners in the car is actually saving a lot of emissions every day. So we really, really deeply care about the space. We absolutely believe in operations. We support a lot of process control industry, so there is a lot of value that comes out of optimizing for energy, optimizing for yield, optimizing for spend, and all of the above. And safety and security and compliance has gotten really big for us. Regulatory environments is getting tougher and tougher. So besides OT cybersecurity, which is another big play, OT security plus compliance are two big areas we are focused on, which is core to our operations. And people experience and occupant experience is really important for us. So these are areas we care about, but the good news is that this is where AI helps us immensely, all of these areas. So there was a recent article from a Microsoft executive that says, AI is neither artificial nor intelligent. Who has read that? You guys read that? It's not artificial, it's really real. I mean, the point is that it's everywhere, and it's actually adding value everywhere. And that's kind of, I thought it was a great article written, and it actually means a lot. So we've seen a lot of value come out of AI across the board, no matter what domain we pick in, all the way from HR to operations to all these other scenarios I just talked about. We believe in a future world where everything is connected. Maybe not all times, but definitely most of the times. We believe you can run your operations from your coffee shop. So people have better things to do, can strategically think about it. We believe in an augmented future. We believe the value of unlock is from OT plus IT together. Nothing new here, but we actually see this every day. And that's the beauty of it. It's not like it's something 5 years out. We see this today, every day. And autonomous operations creates a ton of value. So as an example, Burj Khalifa is one of the tallest buildings in the world, most recently built, of course, with a lot of money, right? So they had all the latest tech when they built the building. And so you think of, what could you do better? They already have all the control systems you can think of, pretty much in terms of energy optimization. But we are able to provide an AI operating on top of the buildings that does about 10,000 set points a day on temperatures, chillers, switching off on the equipments, and saves an additional 20% on the most automated building. That's the power of AI, because it's like your Nest control in a very layman term in your house. And if you're in the house, maybe you can change it 5 times if you're a very active user of the temperature setting. But Nest can do it 55 times, right? And it never misses. It always knows when you leave, when you're going on vacation, it course corrects. So it skims every other ounce of energy saving that you can get, because it's always on and always thinking like you would be thinking. And that's the benefit of the intelligent operations. And we see this scenario repeat over and over and over again, that when you put AI on top of the most digitized environment, just the fact that it can consistently think and decide like a human being, but optimize continuously, you can get an extra 10 to 20% squeeze in every asset you get. And that's essentially the play for all of us. So we strongly believe that data contextualization is a big deal. That's where you want to start. You want to simplify operations by getting the OT and IT together. We'll talk a little bit about how we do that in Honeywell. We believe buildings is a great opportunity. 40% of carbon emissions are in buildings. 40% is a really big number. We all spend a lot of time within those buildings. They could be factories, they could be offices, could be homes. Safety and healthy are big deals, not just for new generation, just it's meaningful work that we can do in those areas. And autonomous operations is the way to go. Why? The reason that we all get all the pings we get from Googles and Apples of the world is because they monitor maybe 3 big environments we all use all day, right? It's the browser. So So everything we do in the browser is being tracked. Adobe Clickstream data probably is the biggest data you will ever see in any company. And every click you do, everywhere you see is tracked. Everything you do on your phone is tracked. Just with those 2 data points, they're able to personalize everything for us. But there is a huge world outside of those 2 areas. Just here in this room, all of us are sitting. Nobody knows who's sitting next to who. Nobody knows the placement. Nobody knows what we're doing. The chair is here. It doesn't talk to anything. So there's a whole amount of this physical world that is not digitized. It's not wired, right? And imagine if all of that is wired, what we can do with it, right? So, and the only way you can wire up this world is through AI and autonomous operations. There is just no other meaningful way to do it. So it's not only the only possible way for us to try to automate, it is also yielding a ton of value for us that's waiting to be unlocked. So for us, I always talk about in the team, look at, I think Andrew Ng talked about it this morning. He always talks about AI is like electricity, use it everywhere. I think he's a great guy to listen to. And Hillary Mason, and we've worked with she talked about a few things that you'll see in the slide here. But most of the industries you talk about, they spend a lot of time in 2 and 3, right? Because they struggle with how do you apply AI everywhere. I mean, 70% projects just POC. That's a big number, right? Not scaling 70% projects is a problem. And we are no different. Honeywell was the exact same thing 3-4 years ago. I mean, when I came, the average project was 12 weeks long, and it was probably 20% conversion. 80% of the time, we would say, at the end of 12 weeks, oh, there's not enough data, so whatever comes out of the AI is not meaningful to me. Nobody wants to use it. So we go back and we say we paused it because we want more data or better algorithms. And I think Chris, who's the field services lead for Databricks, yesterday put in a chart that said cost of an AI team, a minimum of 2 data engineers, 2 data scientists, engagement managers, $1 million team a year. So that's $1 million team delivering probably 30% projects to production. Not acceptable, right? So I think some of the things we need to work on is that efficiency. But we have been able to get that up to more than 80% right now in Honeywell. Our conversion ratio is 80% when we launch a project. We know we're going to get value out of it. And the way you do that is to make sure that the data is there. But the other way to do it is to make sure you use AI to create the data. So what do I mean by using AI to create the data is we have found that there is so much contextual information available for your AI to be able to fill in the gaps. It can populate master data very effectively. We have used it in SAP migration projects. We have 50 SAP systems in Honeywell. Yeah, 50. So, and 14 plus Salesforce systems. And I was like, you have 50 SAP systems? I'm coming and doing analytics for Honeywell because you don't know what you're doing. And there's a lot of value coming out of analytics. So migrating those systems, we are down to less than 10 systems now. But we used AI for data migration because AI is able to learn who a Honeywell customer is. It's able to recognize from a new system. It's able to apply the master data. It's able to populate commodity codes, able to populate payment terms. You're not waiting for a business SME to populate this data anymore, right? AI can create a lot of really good data. It can clean your data. It can rationalize your data, map your data. You'll be very surprised how effective it is. And that, I think, is probably the one thing if you want to take away from this is don't wait for the data to create great algorithms. Don't push your data science team to spend a lot of time on stage 2 and 3, especially 3 where they're trying to find better algorithms. I think Andrew Ng talked about it today in terms of data-driven AI, the quality. And he's absolutely right. You just need about 20 to 60 samples, which is good samples for you to get an AI to work, right? So if you spend your AI to actually create that data, you will go much faster and get a lot more value. And so we've focused very much on building the AI engines first, which actually create our data parity, which then feeds our other use cases. And we found it to be very useful. And clearly, the other thing we've also learned is the persona-based delivery, right? In terms of extraction of value, we track what we call as opportunity dollars, which to me is, hey, I've got all these ideas, and I think I can make 200 million out of it, right? And then you deliver the AI, and then you say you classify $100 million worth of spend automatically to give it to the right buyers. That we call as enable dollars. So when you give $100 million of new spend to a buyer, he cannot eliminate the spend. You still have to buy stuff, right? It's not like suddenly I don't have to buy them. But you can negotiate a better price, so maybe you get $5 million more savings out of it. That's the realized dollar. So you start off with a $100 million spend classification enabled, and you end up with 5 million use case, 5 million realized value. In another use case like pricing, you might be able to find 50 million worth of opportunity, but they might be able to get 30 million, and they actually go make the price changes. So based on the use case, your realized dollars are very different, but you have to absolutely track realized dollars, and that only happens if you're able to productize the offering. Dashboards don't help anymore. People are just so tired of dashboards. So we kind of find that change management process forces behavior, products change behavior. So how many of you had to teach people to use Teams? We didn't have to teach anybody to use Zoom. We didn't have to teach anybody to use Concur. So if you're able to make an application out of the intelligence you created for the persona, we have found that to be a much faster way to actually get value out of it. Adoption is no longer an issue, because you're tying it to a product that's already existing. And it could be simple things like tying it to the Salesforce you already have, which is okay. But that last step and last mile is probably another step that we have found to be very, very useful in the approach. So overall, I think we've seen benefits of this approach in all three areas. There is an OT example, Dr. Reddy's lab, where we have saved $2 million in terms of their pharma operations using intelligence. AI in their buildings. We've also used it for data aggregations in many projects. In Honeywell, we have saved at least 30 to 40% on these migration projects, and these are very effective use of AI. And we've also done this in IT plus OT space in a lot of process industries over and over again, where you can get a ton of value on use cases. And the use cases are nothing new for all of you. I think the approach for us is that don't wait for the data to be there, try to create the data with AI. And I think that's really worked for us. And there are some technologies we're very, very excited about for the same reason. And one on the left is the vision-based technologies we're very excited about. And why is that? Because I could wire up all of these chairs in this building, right? So we've done this in our headquarters in Charlotte. It costs a lot of money to find out who's sitting where, and are they using the kitchen more, or the third floor is more used, or the first floor, because you got to put sensor everywhere. And you've seen these buildings where you see those lights and they go off. They're very good, very effective solutions. Takes a long time, costs a lot of money. Or I could put a camera or a LiDAR, and I can sense how many people are there, which is much more effective. Or I could have the network on our Wi-Fi devices to be able to use. So there's many ways you can get the data. But the most effective we have seen is around the video part, right? Because that doesn't miss anything. You can go back and label it. If you capture the video, you can go back and train it again. So we actually believe that the best and one of the fastest ways to unlock value in the next 1 to 3 years, especially as we try to get all of this OT information into the digital, is on the vision side. And the good news for all of us is the vision algorithms are the most mature. They've been really good in improving those in the last decade. Thanks for all the guys in Databricks and the open source community who've been doing that. But those are the most reliable algorithms. So we find a way to label them. We find it's a very exciting space. And the next level of that is clearly the AR and the VR. And the AR and VR, always the problem was that wearing it more than 10 minutes gives you nausea. Right? I don't know how many of you have tried wearing an AR, VR device for a lengthy amount of time. I don't know. There's not a lot of ocular place here. So the problem is wearing it for a lengthy amount of time, right? So, but I'm talking to people who are saying actually that they're able to wear it for more than 4 or 5 hours at a time, have virtual meetings with people in Australia who hand them over papers and pens, and it's interactive. So if the technology is getting there, it's a huge opportunity for especially the industrial OT world. Because what's the number one problem we have in our refineries? Did this thing go down because a maintenance engineer came and messed it up? Or it goes down because something actually happened through the process? I can't tell the difference. Just to have that answer, I need to know, was there a maintenance schedule, which I need to talk to the maintenance system about, and talk to SAP about what it was, what the work order was. And the work orders are not there most of the time. So you're guessing, was it a real maintenance that caused it? There was a maintenance that did last week that caused it, a maintenance that happened yesterday that caused it, or just happened on its own? Just simple questions you can get answers for. But if they actually use augmented reality, and you can track everything they've done, right? Everything that they've done, you already have digitized. So it's a huge value prop in terms of figuring out what is causing what. In shopping experience, this is you go to the Amazon virtual store, you see a size 7 shirt, a size 18 shirt, it's not there in stock. You move out of the Zach store, and then you go to the next store. So what does Amazon do right away? Any guesses? It tells you size 18 will arrive for you tomorrow, right? Don't leave the store. I'm going to give you why? Because they're able to see everything that you just did. And this is the number one reason we are super excited about the left side of it, because it is just creating us, the IoT world, the opportunity to track everything that's ongoing so we can actually respond better to these use cases. And so we are investing a lot of time. If you ask me, again, have we seen a ton of value we have in vision systems, in digital microscopes, and areas like that, where I think all of you probably are seeing some use cases. But we strongly believe it's going to open up a whole ton of use cases in the next few years, right? And then blockchain clearly is everybody talks about it. It's a huge opportunity for us. And the generative AI is something that Hillary talked about this morning, which is, again, is a fantastic topic. Again, for the same reasons, is that creating data with AI, contextual information, is going to help get better intelligence out the door. And generative AI, we're using transformers, we're using some early stages of these. It's going to create a ton of value, again, to digitize our environment in a meaningful way that's going to lead to much better intelligent operations. So I think that's probably my last slide. So questions to the panel. How did I do on time? You're good. I'm good? All right.
You can stay up here.
All right, good.
You can stay up here. So, yeah, thank you, Muthu. I mean, it's exciting stuff you guys are doing at Honeywell. It's always an awesome thing to watch, when the futuristic aspects of technology are getting as much focus in manufacturing now, which is just great. So coming from that background, very much appreciated. So with that, we're going to move to the panel. David, you're going to keep me honest. How much time do we have here?
45 minutes.
All righty, perfect. So we'll have Peter and Amy join us on stage. And I'm going to get comfortable because I have to sit right next to these guys, and I just am not as impressive. So I'm like really feeling the star power here. So, all right, so over the next 45 minutes, we're going to have a discussion about AI in manufacturing, what's hot, what's not. Oh, geez, I don't want to fall. OK, what's hot, what's not, what's driving all the value creation, what are some of the challenges and the journeys that these leaders have taken. So like I mentioned earlier, collectively, this is a group that represents about $350 billion in market cap. So, the scale at which these guys operate is just, there's a lot to learn from. And as a result, Databricks has learned a lot as we've gone in our journey of verticalizing towards manufacturing. So really cool. So before we get started, again, a big thank you for you guys to invest your time and coming over here and sharing your insights with the audience and certainly with the Brickster community here. To get started, we'll do a round of introductions. So I guess you already met Muthu, so I'm going to skip Muthu if you don't mind.
They've seen enough of me.
They've seen enough of you.
Yeah.
We'll go with Amy. Tell us a little bit about, obviously your name's on the screen, which that's absolutely good. But tell us more about your background and tell us about, overall what you're responsible for at Deere.
Sure. Yeah, so Amy DeGrowie, as you can see on the screen, product manager for our manufacturing data platform and analytics at John Deere. What that means is I've got teams of data engineers who are working on making our manufacturing data more available in our Databricks Lakehouse, most specifically. And then team building analytic applications on top of that that are used in our manufacturing operations by quality engineers, manufacturing engineers, supply management folks, et cetera. And then a team of data scientists that are working on how can we develop analytic models that we can embed into our core systems and tools, our ERP, our MES, et cetera, that will allow those solutions to be smarter and streamline the work that our folks are doing in our factory operations. So that's our focus. Lots of exciting work. I'm really excited to learn a little bit more from these guys and share our story.
Thanks, Amy. Peter.
Sure. And hearing $350 billion, a lot of pressure on us up here, so please go.
You see what I was doing there?
So Peter Conradi, I'm Executive Director for Data and Digital Solutions for Collins Aerospace. What we're really focused on is anything around applications, data science and analytics, and platforms when you think about the aviation space. Anything from predictive analytics, pulling things off wing to make sure we don't have unexpected downtime on an aircraft, all the way to optimizing a flight path so we can save on fuel time and really contribute to that sustainability. And again, excited to talk with the folks here and really kind of share a little bit about what data and digital has meant for us.
Awesome, thank you, Peter. So we'll start off, the way we're going to do this is just have a few prepared questions, but I feel like these guys don't really need much. I think if they just talk for the next 30 minutes without my moderating, I think you guys will still enjoy it, but I'll try and add some value here. So we'll talk a little bit about the macroeconomic environment a little bit. The backdrop's been choppy, fair to say, over the last couple of years. We were just coming out of the pandemic, then we hit record high inflation numbers. Fuel costs are a little crazy, as all of you feel at the pump, but it's also driving a lot of cost inflation within cost structures. So every month we hear about some supply chain bottleneck causing production downtime and reputational impact to brands who cannot deliver their product on time and the quality at which they're expected to perform. So let me ask the obvious question: to what extent have these sort of macro factors influence your company's investment or your team's investment in data and AI? Is this time to sort of cut? And to the extent that you can share, everybody's under some pressure or the other. Given the headlines we read, is it a time to cut? Is it a time to maintain? Is it a time to grow? Tell us more. So we'll start with Peter, then followed by Amy, and then Muthu.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, especially in the aviation space, obviously we went through the pandemic and a lot of cuts to budgets and kind of reassessing what's going on in the world. If there's one thing that didn't change, it's the access and the ability to get data. Right? We all have data from how we run our operations, whether it's historical data, could be real-time operational data, could be customer data that we've stored or have access to now. And even throughout all that time, while maybe supply chains were experiencing difficulties, potentially part shortages or shortage of resources, one thing that we did have access to was that data. And so one thing, especially for our team in Collins, has been, well, how do we start to make more value from that data? How do we start to focus in on how we can use that data that is available to drive value for us, whether it's directly for us to drive efficiencies, whether it's for customers to drive, again, fuel optimization or reduce downtime. But I think the big thing for us has been, even with all of this, it's really the time to keep going faster. We have these people, even though we're not in an office, we're able to access our computers, we're able to get on Zoom. Once you get through that barrier, there's that opportunity for us to go make a difference so that once things get back to where they are now, we get back to actually operating aircraft, we get back to getting in the factories where they need to be. The data has been positioned, the solutions have been built, we're ready to then really start to go realize those savings. And so I think for us, yes, we've seen challenges, we've seen some of those struggles, but it's really been an area where data's been more important than ever, and our customers are telling us it's more important than ever. So it's an area where we really are trying to double down, and I think we've exited, I should say exited, we haven't really exited anything yet, but where we're at right now is there's a lot more focus on, well, let's really drive that value from the data, because regardless of the environment that we're in, data is where we're really going to be able to unlock that value for our customers.
Yeah, I think those are really good points, and data is definitely the future. And if you saw the keynote this morning where our CIO talked about John Deere's digital transformation and our journey to become a smart industrial organization, that came out a couple of years ago, has not slowed down in the least. Our senior leadership is still very focused on how do we become that techno-industrial leader, how do we drive more data and AI into our products, into our operations, and double down on investment on our infrastructure, as well as training that workforce. That was one of the things that came up in the slides, is how do we make sure that our employees have the right skills and tools that they need to make that vision a reality. And so it's a really exciting journey to be on, and definitely excited to see where we take it.
Sue?
I certainly agree. I mean, it's spot on investing. This is an area that we have to invest because the cycles are faster, especially this year for us. Inflation is 10% plus. How many times can you pass on a price change to your customer before they say, go to hell, right? So, it's an activity that you actually do. It's like, hey, how far can we push this thing? What's the model? And so it's an area that you cannot handle because the cycles are getting faster and the variabilities are higher. And it is not a single reason why a stock out happens. There is a million reasons why it happens. And so the only way to deal with it is, again, AI. And we also believe strongly, we talk about, I say AI is similar to a procurement team. Why procurement? Because procurement is usually one of those functions always money driven. They always, in any company you go, they always know their numbers. What's their target material productivity, right? You take a $15 billion company, procurement team does an average of $100 to $200 million of savings each year in addition on top of what they did last year. AI is one of those. It's going to have an impact like your procurement organization to your operations if you're able to use it everywhere. You have to think in that size, and it is actually possible. So if you have that big of a number riding on it, we absolutely have to invest. There is no backing away, and maybe it's a better time to do it.
Yeah. So to summarize, speed, move faster, commit to the vision, and then your point is we can't wait. Like we have to do this, right? Like so that's awesome. So let me ask a follow-up on this. Now that none of these macroeconomic factors had like a warning sign that anybody could predict, right? Like it's not that we knew that these things were coming, right? Jet fuel costs, we didn't know that this was going to be the current price, and inflation, nobody could have seen it coming unless if any of you did, you are geniuses and you don't need to be here. But there was not an onset or an early warning sign that you could have prepared for this any better. So let me ask, like you got thrown these challenges from the economic environment. How did you or your teams, can you share an example of how you were able to sort of organize yourself around in a short time frame or a long time frame to take this challenge on and apply data and AI to create value against one or all of these factors? Let me ask you. I think a lot of people who are here in the audience, I think it'll be useful for them to learn from that. And again, would love to learn a little bit more. So we'll start with Muthu, and we'll go from that.
Yeah,
side.
sure. There's a number of use cases, and I'll probably talk about pricing again because it's very relevant for all the companies this year. And so we've been able to collect data from, since with the data lake approach, we've had enough transaction history. We are able to get a lot of data from our suppliers just with their interactions. So we've actually wired up, when they call a supplier, what's the sentiment look like, and we actually capture that. Our team's interactions among the teams around a particular supplier, what the alternate suppliers are. All of these are contextual information that we've been able to then use to say, so we can actually have a score. As soon as we cut a purchase order, we are able to come up with a predictable score of 90 days, or is this even going to make it? Do we think we can get this product? Is the supplier going to is there a high risk to it or not? Depending on all the things going on. And that's immensely helpful because if it's a high risk score, the supplier is going to actually now have the place order for more than 2 or 3 suppliers as opposed to 1. So your revenue is not at risk at the end of the day. It's a simple example. But it's not just for negotiations or getting better payment terms, it's also predictability of the business. Because in our aerospace business, I'm sure in Collins, you've got these huge engines waiting, and if the final wire doesn't arrive, you still can't ship the engine. So everything has to come. So that scale of products that you have to estimate for arrival, the only way we were able to do it is through AI and machine learning. So procurement was that supplier base was a big example for us. Very cool.
Yeah. So within John Deere, our customers are facing a unique challenge in that, for each step of their production cycle, they typically have one shot with a very tight time window to get it right. And so they rely heavily on our availability of parts and service and equipment. So we need to work very closely with our dealers to make sure we're able to deliver on those commitments. And so, the variety and the frequency of risks that we've seen lately has really been a catalyst for managing our supply chain resiliency, making sure that our risk management processes are robust, that we've got good resiliency measures, and that we're really taking that comprehensive view and reaching back further into the supply chain and our logistics networks to understand all of the different factors and making sure that we're taking a very comprehensive approach and understanding all the different permutations of risk that we can using the data and AI to try to mitigate those risks on behalf of our customers before they have a bigger impact than they have to.
Yeah, and maybe I'll go more to an internal example. I think great examples from a customer standpoint. One of the things that, got a great team actually sitting in front of us from Collins, we have all of this data, whether it's operational data from our assets, whether it's data that go across the networks that are traffic from aircraft, from boarding passes, whatever's going through the back offices of airlines. What do we do with that data? What's the access rights to that data? How do we use that data? So when we talk about creating the value from data, unless you know what that data is, where it is, what those rights are, and how you can utilize it, you really can't tap into that. And so one of the things that we've really doubled down on is how to really focus around using the technology we have to create a robust data management program to, again, organize that data, get it in the right spot, ensure that the developers and the data scientists have immediate access to that data so that we can end up creating the solution that our customers need as quickly as we can. I'm sure both of you can probably attest. Long process. It's something that is the least thanked process until it's done, until people see the value. But it's one of those areas that you have to go do and you have to go double down on. And it's something I think this has given us that time to really focus in and say, wait, if we want to hit the ground running, we have to make sure that the foundation is strong and it's there for us, because we were able to build solutions previously, but were we going at the right speed and scale? And the answer was no. And so that's something that we really focused on.
So really cool. So basically taking this as an opportunity to build a stronger foundation that would accelerate you further in the future. Now and in the future. So really cool. So we'll switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about data and AI driving sustainability outcomes. So this is a hot topic. There's no denying it's in every CEO, C-suite statement out there. I think half of, this is as per a Deloitte survey, more than half of industry executives report that their environmental sustainability initiatives have significantly boosted their profits. So this is really interesting. But at the same time, this is a little bit of a contrarian view. Reducing waste, or muda in the Japanese system, and even driving energy efficiency has always been sort of been an emphasis for manufacturing since some donkey's years, right? So it's always been the focus of AI use cases also. So this begs the question, there's a secular focus on sustainability. What kind of notable shifts has that sort of brought to bear? Has it sort of accelerated projects or use cases that you guys were already doing, or has it fundamentally sort of created new opportunities for growth? So we'll do this in the order of Amy, Muthu, and Peter. So what do you guys think? Is this just old wine, new bottle, or is this truly something transformative or some space for innovation here?
Yeah, so I mean, at John Deere, we're an agriculture and construction leader. Our customers are intrinsically linked to the land. So sustainability has kind of always been a focus for us. But I'm really excited with some of the ways that we recognize that we're in a unique position to really help our customers deliver on their sustainability goals, as well as our own. And so the products and the features that we're launched recently, things like our See and Spray product that uses machine vision, so that as the sprayer is going through the field, it's looking at the crops and seeing what's a weed and only applying herbicide to the weeds. And that's been able to definitively reduce our customers' herbicide inputs by up to 75%. I mean, we can measure that. And similarly, we've invested in Kreisel Electric to advance the electrification of our products. And so, thereby reducing our customers' fossil fuel emissions and, things like that. And so as we look forward, I think there's a lot more opportunity, and I'm excited to see what, our folks at Intelligent Solutions Group and Blue River continue to come up with, in that area of how can we move to that sense and act strategy where we're no longer managing those operations at the farm or the field level. We're really able to use analytics and AI to drive down to the plant level and really take care of each of those individual plants on the field and just do what they need and no more.
Very cool. Will do.
It's a great opportunity. So first of all, it gives a sense of purpose to our talent in terms of sustainable, safe future. I think it's resonating. I'm happy it's top of mind for everybody. And in terms of products, I mean, we've always had a lot of, I talked about some of them already, Solstice and others, but energy optimization is a big thing. We really care about buildings and a lot of optimization of buildings. We are able to predict what is going to be the energy consumption if you do X, Y, and Z, and what is it going to be if you don't do them, and be able to get ahead of the curve. So actually, without compromising occupant expense, that's a big area for us. The second area is things like methane gas emissions, the fugitive emissions. You can sense them, we use a lot of AI to sense them in the field and open petrochemical industries. It's hard to do those things without the help of AI and sensing. So I think it's meaningful into products that are coming out of AI that were otherwise not possible, and towards sustainability is actually really making an impact for us.
Yeah, I think two great examples. The thing maybe I would just add is, Muthu hit on it a bit, which is sustainability affects all of us. At the end of the day, anything that we do, it's not just for our customers and an outcome our customers are asking for. And something that we've seen prior to all of this is, obviously a push to more sustainable flight and finding ways to optimize. And so we've been looking at how do we optimize trajectories to save on fuel, take into account weather and what's going on in the environment, and do something real time. But I think this has made it even more real, as it's not just for what our customers are looking for fuel savings and cost savings. It's what our customers are looking for. The passengers are now looking at, you look at Google Flights and they give you how efficient a flight is, and now people are looking at that in terms of their buying decisions. And then the third piece is, and maybe the most important for us as leaders for our organizations, is the employees, and they care about what we're doing from a sustainability standpoint. And so, we're looking at how is it that every investment that we make is looking at those three areas. How are we ensuring that, obviously it's value for the customer and the company. We have to make money, but sustainability is a fun one in that, I think we all win at the end of the day, and it's those investments that we make around data and technology and really AI that's going to push that even further and farther. And again, it's a win-win for everybody in the room.
That's pretty cool. So what you're saying is that if you were thinking with your blinders on, you would miss the play altogether, right? You'd really have to take less of a point solution view of saying, I can optimize this plant or this line, or I can reduce footprint by this much, but more of an ecosystem that's beyond the four walls of the organization. To your point, going from customers to customer cares about it, hence we have to care about it, and you're really thinking far out. So really cool. I did like that call out, particularly, which I found interesting, which was around electrification and energy efficiency overall. I did want to ask a question around that. Just from your sense, how does electrification, if I just look at that as a technology that's sort of getting more and more adopted, especially in industrial equipment, automotive, around the aspect of that. How does that sort of impact the way, is it different? It doesn't matter? It doesn't matter if there are more electric cars on the road to what your data and AI strategies were? And I'm just giving that as an example. It doesn't matter that tractors have electric things going on? Or is it, because there are more electric stuff out there and more technology is moving towards electric, it's actually a driving acceleration for data and AI. What do you guys think about that? Is that something that you're seeing, or is it, doesn't really matter if things go electric? What's your thought there?
Okay, Al.
I was going to say, you didn't tell us who to talk first.
You always had to
talk amongst yourselves. No, just kidding. No, let's. So since you brought up Amy, you mentioned the electrification and how important that is to the Deere organization and where you guys are going in terms of your product mix. How about you kick us off, and then we'll have Peter and Muthu follow.
Thank you for the order. See?
Yeah.
Jeez, without order, this is chaos.
Like monkeys, we just need.
See what I have to do here? All right, so Amy, jokes aside.
All right. So I think the electrification piece, while it has the sustainability play, that's probably a bad way to say it, but the data and AI piece, I think, is really exciting because so much of that is digital. Right, and so we can get more information, and since we're kind of starting fresh with that, we can redesign, our product forms to some extent. We can redesign the data capture that's coming with those products. We kind of have a chance to start fresh. And similarly with a lot of our manufacturing operations too, that's gonna change things as well. So we can kind of get in and do it with this new lens of data and AI, and how can we design these systems and processes that are gonna support the whole life cycle of that new product or capability, kind of with this idea of, what do we want to do with the data, and what questions do we want to answer, and how can we kind of do it right out of the gate when we're kind of starting over with some of the kind of big systems within our products.
Great, Peter.
You stole the answer out of my mouth.
Okay. So whatever she said.
Basically, I think that's the big thing for us is, we look at, electrification aside, we look at things like predictive maintenance, and how do you predict when you need to pull something off wing, when is it going to fail? Because if it fails and causes a disruption, worst case for everybody. But how do you extract beyond that, or take a step back and say, well, how do I prevent that from ever happening? How do I take the learnings from a failure and design it into the products? And so I think when we think about electrification, even if it's replacing with something that may have been hydraulic or mechanical into electric, whatever that shift may be, it's how do you model in advance? How do you take the data that you already have from how something did function, use that to model the next product? So really to build for the future. And again, you can't really do that without data, and that it just creates kind of that ecosystem of you're using data to solve your customers' problems, inherently you're using it to solve your own problems. How do you kind of pull that thread together?
I think I'll second those two. I think the value engineering that it triggers, right? The re-engineering it triggers is actually good for all of us, because otherwise there was no good reason to re-engineer the whole engine again, right? I mean, this is working well. I mean, like, why do you want to fix it? So this re-engineering is actually then helping with better electrification and better tracking and traceability, which I think gives better optimized outputs, but also better business models. And we see our customers go through, and they want to lease everything as opposed to sell stuff, and reuse it. So I think there is a lot of good benefits that's coming out of the trigger for electrification that actually is helping overall. Yeah.
Very cool. So more electric cars on the road, more electric stuff on the road. Good thing for data.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So I like to simplify things. So this topic was probably the most upvoted one, and we're going to switch gears to this one. When we were preparing for this, all of our Databricks team wanted me to ask you this question, and I do think it's particularly gnarly, so watch out for this one, this particular one specifically. Okay, so obviously this is nothing you guys aren't used to, but so this is really a topic about measuring success of data and AI strategies. So just to give some stats, so there was a report that McKinsey did a few years ago, and they reported, and this was actually in the middle of the pandemic, so reported that about 30% of digital transformation initiatives move, very similar numbers to what you saw in our survey today, move past POC and go into full production, right? So it's the same numbers you saw today in our survey. So it hasn't really changed, right? It's kind of been stagnant for a while, for 2 years or so. But where that report at the time, 2 years ago, was focused on is measuring this across different industries. So the trend is actually more pronounced, according to them, for traditional industries such as oil and gas, automotive, infrastructure and pharmaceuticals, where success rates are actually way lower than 30%. They're 4 to 11% range. So that's a very low number, right? So I've got to ask, how do your companies or your, within your teams as leaders, how do you measure or determine the success of data and AI strategy? And we'll talk a little bit about, and I'll have a follow-up for you, but let's start with that. So we'll start with Muthu, and then we'll go down the lane here.
First, more is elevate the conversation. We have a scorecard to our CEO on a monthly basis on value created specifically from analytics. And I'll say that because he will tell us that, hey, I've got 500 guys in the company running around saying they're saving inventory. So don't tell me you saved inventory with analytics. Tell me exactly where you did and why you did with it, right? So we're very particular about the realized savings. Is it hitting the books? Because we talk about in a notional savings, there's no, so yes, what that forces the analytics teams to do is you would have to do 10 projects, and 9 out of the 10 projects, the business would say, I wanted it was good work. But only 3 of them you can actually significantly measure the value. It's always that case. You just have to do the 10. But you have to follow the money for the 2 of the 3. And so we get specific financial targets for our teams. If you didn't achieve that realized savings, which actually is a written email from the finance team saying, yes, I realized it, and it is attributed to analytics related, not like I'm not realizing more revenue because I hired new sales guy, more revenue because analytics helped me get the revenue. Very, very particular. So you do a lot of work because of that as an analytics team, but what you count is actually the small portion of it. But I think that's okay, it's still a good thing, and having that muscle and the discipline to realize dollars has really helped us, and it forces us to change the right ones. Yeah.
So on that one, if I may ask, for you to unpack what so you said realized savings. So
Yes.
what are some of the metrics?
It's only three numbers, mostly two. Revenue, margin. Okay, it's what the CEO cares about. Some years you care about inventory, in some businesses, working capital, but working capital is usually the third one. So it's usually revenue and margin that you have to really go and impact. Nothing else gets recognized. And so we try to tie our use cases to those. And then you have to also have meaningful numbers on them, right? So you really have to, we did sales excellence that helps with revenue generation. But we have rolled it out to all of our 37 small business units. Like every business unit has the same algorithm running. We've done compliance, even compliance is globally rolled out. So it's another thing that you want to push for is whatever AI you create, you have to roll it out for all of the company, or everybody who cares about it should get it. If it's procurement, it's all procurement, not just one use case. So that actually forces the teams to also build meaningful solutions that are actually moving the needle for the company. You didn't do one use case in one factory and say at 50,000, it's cool. Well, no, it's not cool if you can scale it to everybody in the company. So that revenue and margin is the bottom line.
Amy?
So I guess turnabout's fair play, because I stole Peter's answer and stole mine. But very similar, really where can we tie the value of the analytics to a hard savings, right? Whether that's inventory or returns and allowances reduction, overtime expense reduction, things like that. Where can we definitively tie something to a KPI or a metric that will hit the bottom line? Not to say that everything's a big win, right? But you get those big wins and then you're able to make space for experimentation or the smaller projects and really focus on the big ones that you are able to translate into those hard savings. The other thing that we're really trying to do and build into our value framework kind of going forward is how can we measure the value delivery throughout the cycle and understand how we can measure and capture incremental value as we go through and say, that way we aren't waiting till the end to kind of celebrate and get the credit, and then also if something doesn't completely pan out, it won't be a total loss. We can say, well, we created this data product that would have supported this thing that would have been awesome, but now that data product exists and somebody might be able to build on it for another solution down the road, but at least we can kind of, recognize that it wasn't a complete loss, right? We did something. It just maybe didn't go in the direction we initially thought, but we can now take it in a different direction. So how can we recognize and celebrate along the way and not just have to wait until it goes to final production, right? Celebrate that it went to one factory, right? And then how can we go to the next one and the next one? So there's lots of opportunity.
Yeah. Peter?
Two good answers. I'm just going to follow up with a similar one. I guess the only thing I'd add is it's how do you treat everything you do like a product? And I don't mean to say let's stifle innovation and make sure we go through processes and giant business cases every time you kick off a program, but it's how do we think about what's the outcome you're trying to drive and who's your customer? Because I think we've probably all seen it. You can throw out 1,000 good ideas at a data scientist and they could go tackle all of them, but does that mean you're going to get anything out of it that's going to drive real value for the business? And so every single time we kick off a project, who's your stakeholder, right? If it's internal or external, what is it they're looking for? What would make them buy it, right? And when we think about internal data projects, and I think sometimes those get a pass of not feeling like you need to have a stakeholder. There's nobody giving you dollars to go execute, but you should treat it that way. At the end of the day, if I'm going to build something for somebody to drive productivity, would they sign up and say, yes, I'm going to buy it. I will roll it out. If you meet these 3 KPIs, I will execute that on my entire supply chain across the world. To your point, doesn't mean that you need to build that solution out the gate, but if you get that stakeholder and they're aligned with you and you work through the program, then ideally you hit those key metrics, you hit what they're asking for, then you should be able to roll it out and scale it. a lot of the areas I feel like we get bogged down on is, again, you don't have that clear customer and you don't have the clear use case. So you make the investment, you build a cool dashboard, you build an analytic. Ideally, you ask somebody if they would use something and they have no skin in the game. Sure, why not? I'll take a dashboard. Give me whatever you want. But then once the funding comes down, it goes, but would you put your dollar on the line? Would you put your team's time on the line to support this? They're going to immediately back away. And so how is it that anything you kick off, you make sure that the stakeholders you're working with, they're your customers, right? Whether it's internal or external, they're in it with you. They've got skin in the game. You're both aligned on what that outcome is. You're both aligned on what kind of the win is for that project.
No, I want to build. It's a great point that Peter made. So, don't do it for free. Force yourself to charge, and when you charge, they're going to tell, oh, you're my vendor now, so I can treat you like a vendor. You'll get some of those guys, okay? It's part of the game, and they'll be like, oh, okay, so you're going to do whatever I want now. I'm your customer. I'm like, fine, that's a game you want to play, but force yourself to be in that position because you really want to create something that they would use. And we've had projects in plant where we'll say we're going to run an optimization engine to reduce your lead time for the product. Okay, we'll reduce the lead time by 50%. But then we always make sure that you bring the sales guy in for the product and say, okay, if I reduce the lead time by 50%, because you're always yelling and screaming at planning saying my lead time is high, is your business, are you going to get 10% more business? Are you going to put it on writing saying that if the lead time goes from 140 days to 70 days, my target goes 10% up for the revenue? If they say no, don't do the project. It's just force the conversation on make them pay for it because if there is value, they'll pay for it. And make sure they're accountable from the beginning that they would use it because without them actually executing the price change or the sales cycle, there is nothing being gained and you can't measure it. So I think those are great points that
exactly. I mean, you can't realize the value if your customers, your stakeholders aren't actually using the solution, right? So, giving that data literacy and the trust in analytics across your stakeholders. Or one of my data scientist friends made the comment, if nobody asks me ever again to put it in the ML, that will be a win.
That's a good one.
So really having that, the stakeholder alignment and engagement and, the pull from them and really understanding what they're asking for and, what it takes to deliver it, I think is where we need to get to. That's a mountain we need to climb.
So I'm going to try and summarize that because I think it's really good insight. So I'm going to do this in maybe one line each. So qualify, right? Second is make sure you follow the dollars, right? Revenue, margin, working capital. And the last one is just don't focus on the big wins. Focus on a portfolio of projects and make incremental wins throughout the way. So really cool advice to peers who are going through this journey. So appreciate you guys sharing that with us. So we're at 10 minutes left. So I am going to ask 2 fill-in-the-blank questions. This is going to be fun. So this is, sorry, anybody has any comments on the fill-in-the-blank? I'm not asking you guys to fill in the blanks. These guys. Okay. So data and AI, the technology ecosystem is very broad, very wide. I think there's one of the founders and fathers of advanced analytics talked about how machine learning is like code is like only 5%. It's a vast ecosystem of things that need to happen around that line of code or lines of code to actually make things happen. So with that, I'm going to ask you just a simple question. You know this, right? There's edge, there's cloud, there's sensors, there's connectivity, there's 5G. There's so many enabling technologies for you guys to do what you're doing. So fill in the blank question. I could achieve 10x more value from my AI investment if I could solve for blank. So now that you don't get chaotic on me, I'm going to start this way. So, Peter.
Can I go last this time? This is the worst one. What would I want to solve? I think I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna cheat and say if it's between edge and cloud, specifically for aviation. Edge is the hardest part, right? Because everything we talk about getting it onto an aircraft is near impossible, right? The value prop isn't there. Airlines don't make enough money to want to put more things on the aircraft. It takes time to certify, it takes time to get it on there. So it really comes down to how do we accelerate the time to collect and generate new data? If tomorrow you could tell me I could put a sensor on every system on every aircraft in the entire world and have this plethora of data, you'd relieve this challenge that we have of, again, you've got aircraft in the skies that are 30, 40, 50 years old, that aren't instrumented, that don't have the right sensors, that don't have the right ability to then generate the data to create value. So what we're doing today is, what data do we have? What maintenance records do we have so we can do text analytics and parse it? What pilot reports do we have where they heard a loud sound, or the switch didn't work in the cockpit? We have to find all these ways to stitch a number of different data sources today that might not have the right fidelity, that might not have the right quality, and it takes us a long time to get to value. So if tomorrow we could outfit the entire global fleet with every sensor on the planet for zero cost, for zero time, everyone's laughing because never going to happen. That would just open up such a plethora of information for us to now tap into and create new value. And I think we'd learn a lot that we just don't even know about in terms of the challenges.
Yeah, I think similar, the 10x improvement comes from the data, right? The data-driven AI. How do we get good, clean data up front? That's what's going to accelerate the ROI on the back end. In our area, we've got a lot of, well-established, we'll call them, systems. We're a 185-year-old company, right? We've been around a long time. We've got a lot of time to accumulate stuff. And not a lot of it is consistent, right? It wasn't, built in a time where we were, thinking about data and AI. And so that was not part of the, kind of the design patterns that were in place. And so, trying to kind of harmonize this data across all these different locations globally, different tools and devices, even the stuff that is smart, right? Maybe this one's collecting it in Fahrenheit and this one's in Celsius, and you've got a lot of inconsistencies in the information that you're collecting. So it's a significant data engineering effort up front to get it into a usable format that we can use. The other thing, around some of the things that Andrew Ng was talking about, the good part is, right, we have a lot of very good quality systems, right? So, the things that we're trying to detect don't happen that often, right? So how do we get the right data, from the right time so that we can see the things we need to see and make the right predictions and drive the right insights? Because, good problem to have, most of the time it works. We don't have a lot of defects in many cases. But when we do, we need to be able to dial in and identify those very quickly. But it all comes down to having the right data as an input, right? Data needs to be the driver, not the afterthought. So how do we put that up front in the conversation and really understand what we want to drive to, so we can get there faster?
I would add, we call it data contextualization. We talked about it, but that's the number one problem. And then the other one I do believe that we should solve is the personification of the workflows. How do we close the loop with the humans? With the devices, I think we can with the edge. With the humans, I think there is not enough products, to your point, you mentioned that, to change behaviors fast enough. That I would love to see we can solve at scale and be able to deploy personal apps at speed after the data contextualization. So,
Cool. Yeah. All right, so very fascinating stuff. So another last fill-in-the-blank question, since we only have 5 minutes, and I'm going to... Oh, I have plenty of time. Look at me. All right. You guys ready for this? Yeah. All right. So we're going to do one more fill-in-the-blank question. So in the next 5 years, and let's stick with that horizon, right? Because Muthu, some of the stuff you had on your x-axis was really cool, but somewhat out there, which is cool. I'm very excited. But let's stick with the 5-year horizon, right? In the next 5 years, not me, you guys, are most excited about data and AI transforming blank in my industry. So obviously you all represent different industries, so this is super convenient for me because we get to cover a broad set of industries. So we'll start with Amy, and then we'll follow it up with Muthu and Peter.
Sure. So data and AI is definitely transforming a lot of what we're doing out in our factories and our fields. We've spent the last 10 years putting data and analytics into the hands of our customers with things like Operations Center and whatnot. And so in the next 5, personally, maybe this isn't for John Deere, but personally within my little slice of John Deere, I'm excited to translate that strategy that we've taken, insights to intelligence, automation to autonomy, anywhere management, the things that we've done for our customers, and bring those into our factory operations. How can we use that same playbook to deliver similar capabilities to our factory managers, to our shop floor employees, et cetera, and really allow them to manage their work and understand impacts of changes before they make them in the real world, right? With kind of digital twin type capabilities and understanding the ripple effects of changes within the operation and how to optimize, internally the things that we do every day, similar to what we've done for our farming operations out in the field.
I think our goal is sustainability and safety. I think we're finding internally a lot of good use cases we're able to get value out of, and we just want, I wish all of those use cases reach all of our customers and we're able to help them create sustainable products. We have a lot of energy customers. Real hope is we use AI to help them create sustainable products and safe products. That I think would be a cool thing. So
Cool.
I think for me, both great and novel and really important things for me, if I think about aviation, it's how is data going to transform travel? I feel like it's something that affects all of us. I was talking with folks yesterday around, we all want to go to weddings, graduations, see family, friends, travel the world, and travel's how we get there. And when we think about how data can take a bigger play into that, I just think through from the time you check into the airport, through getting onto the aircraft, flying, landing, how many different touch points are there where data interacts with that, right? Your check-in, how do you streamline and optimize that to make sure they know all your details so you can walk right through the gate, touchless everything, just be able to optimize that. At the airport, how do you make the airport experience better, right? You've got lines, you've got stores aren't open or closed, you're delayed into the airport, you don't have the right services and features. How do you understand what people really want when they're there? On the aircraft, defining what movies do you want to watch, what beverages do you want, what is it going to be like, what's the optimal seat recline for you? All of these different things can play into it. So that entire travel ecosystem is something that I think there's so much room for optimization. There's so many areas that we can use data to create a better experience for us as passengers. So not only reducing the delays and cancellations, which drive us all nuts. I know anybody who's been in the US travel last couple weeks, thousands of flights canceled. I know I drove from a location twice for 6 hours versus taking a flight because of it. How do we make that better? But on top of that, we all want to make sure our hard-earned dollar is for a good experience, and there's so many experiential aspects of travel. So I think when we think about what we can do with data in the travel space, there's so much that's untapped. I think that's the exciting part in the next couple of years.
Got it. So super personalized, frictionless travel, right? Awesome. So with that, we're going to switch over to Q&A. So audience, you better be ready because these guys are ready. So let's, David, can you help us?
So we don't have a microphone. If you get called on, stand up, articulate your question, please.
All right, so we'll see. Gentleman over there.
Stand up, please, and articulate your question.
I think the question is related in both, so in two questions. The first one is that I think that an important part to make answers from the data is to make the right question. So it's the first part, if you agree with that. And if you agree with that, you have a methodology or something for the business to make the right question into your business.
All right, who wants to go first?
I'll say go up the chain as much as you can, because it's not anything intended to mean bad about people. But the point is that if it doesn't matter for your CEO and his direct reports, it probably doesn't matter. And yes, it's tough to go up the chain, but because you could go and optimize reporting and improve productivity for a team, but you still cannot optimize the cost for the company because that operation has to go. So I would push. What we typically end up doing is this needle moving for at least the CEO and 2 levels below CEO. That's it. If those levels don't care about this as a problem statement, you probably shouldn't work on it. And it's not only because it's wrong, it's just sometimes the alignment is not there. You want to improve inventory, and you go up to your VP, the GM of the business, he would say, no, inventory is not my problem. I can't ship fast enough. I'm trying to grab revenue. Why are you focused on inventory? maybe next year he will care about inventory, but this year he's caring about revenue. So we are much likely to get the funding, the sponsorship, the excitement in the company if the CEO and the top 2 levels care about it more than anybody else. That's a smell test.
No, and I think that's a it really is it tied to a strategy? Is it tied to something that you're actually trying to accomplish, right? Is it tied to a KPI, right? Like we were talking about, can you associate this with something you're trying to achieve? The other thing that I guess I would layer in on terms of, is it the right question? Can you articulate the value you're trying to get out? And is it something that can scale? Is it something that we can use across the organization? Is this just a you problem, or is this an enterprise problem, right? And what is the right way to solve it? I think making sure that people are kind of going through that mental exercise before and thinking about that and presenting that information is valuable effort put in up front before you kind of go down a road that is going to be a dead end at the end of the day and just waste time.
Very good. Thank you for that. We'll skip up to the next one. So other questions in the audience here.
Please stand up and articulate your question.
Sure. I have 2 questions. One of the question is, so everybody is explaining about like the benefits of data and AI like in the next 4 or 5 years. Does there even like any cons of it? Like, is there any risks that you could even like think of it? Like, if there is, like, what are they? That's number 1 question. Number 2 is
Actually, can we stop on that one? Two-part questions. They're difficult, man. So just So one question at a time. Just saving you guys. So I feel like I'm on the PGA Tour, and these are professional golfers. They get questions. Why did you make a bogey on number 12? So I think the question is more on the risk side of the equation. I mean, is AI just a force for good, or are there some real risks that you guys see as a result of AI adoption, if I understood the question correctly? So let's have Amy. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's not free. That's for sure. So there's a risk there, whether it's in storage, toss of the data, compute costs of the models, right? Making sure that you've got the right infrastructure and that you understand what you're doing with it. And then obviously there's the $1 million just to spin up a small analytics team or whatever. The other thing that, is come up a few times, in these sessions is the risk of including bias in there, and especially when we get into automation, right? If we don't know that model is doing what we want it to do every time, we're not going to be able to trust it, to automate it and take out the human interaction piece of it. So I mean, I think that's a risk that we need to be very aware of and have clear line of sight to, so that we can achieve the full vision of it. Because if we just go, I think we'll get burned.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add to that too is, AI is a tool like anything else. I mean, I think of my favorite buzzword in the world is blockchain. I believe blockchain has value, but dear Lord, when it first came out, the first couple of years, if you didn't hear blockchain and every CEO, CIO, was anybody using blockchain the way it's meant to be? Did they actually drive value from blockchain? Is a completely different question. So I think the risk there is, how do we over-abuse the idea of AI to the point of throwing it at everything, where we're trying to predict when Jim gets up from his seat to get a coffee, what value is that driving for the business? Spend $100,000 to develop an AI model for it, doesn't create any value.
Hey, it's accurate.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Jim has a lot of coffee, but I think it's how
Jim must be getting a lot done.
It's very hyper.
Yeah.
But I think that's the risk, is how do you ensure that, again, it comes back to that customer, it comes back to the value you're driving, not just that you're using AI, and how do we make sure it doesn't become the hammer to hit every nail.
So choose it to apply it at the right places, not everywhere. So selective. All right, got it. So question, yes?
I have a quick follow-up question on that. We talk about sustainability on one side, where we're trying to optimize some things. On the other side, we talk about like AI, investments, computation. We're burning a lot more energy on the one side to save energy on the other side.
Not quite true, though. Can I take it?
Please.
You got me worked up.
Better you than me. I don't want to answer that question.
Yeah, no. So it's a very fair question, but I think the results are much bigger. But also, we see a lot of innovation, even in sensors. And if you're working with companies, that are not using any energy on the sensors, literally using vibrations and motors to be able to collect data, using solar to collect data. So there is a lot of innovation being done to reduce the use of energy, and all the way from sensing to the cloud. So I think the outsized value we see because of those does not cause the concern that you have. That's probably my answer.
All right. So thank you for that, Muthu, and great question from the audience. Do we have time for one more, or?
One short question.
All right. So one.
And it can't do as long as you've been here, right?
Okay.
Because those days I know, and I'll tell the audience when we go ahead.
Yeah. So just to be clear, whoever is asking this last question, you're holding us up for the happy hour. So you better make it short. All right. So we have one question, gentleman in the polo. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm from Texas, where tractors are very popular. This is actually a question.
Okay.
Oh, directed. Okay.
So what led me here is that I read in a recent interview about from your CTO where he was talking about things like precision agriculture and the enormity of data. And you also talked about how data quality and how things don't happen often, but when you do, it's something that you want to know right away about them. So I guess my question was specifically that I wrote down for you was what's something you want to do in the next 6 to 12 months as it relates to data quality that isn't something possible today?
I don't know if we'll get it in 6 to 12 months, but at least within my area, not as much on the tractors themselves, but within the manufacturing area, we're working on a big harmonization effort within our shop floor systems and tools, because we're recognizing that we're slowing ourselves down, whether it's in data and analytics or whether it's just speed to market of any of our digital features, right? When you have to develop the same capability on multiple different platforms, multiple different MES systems, multiple different ERP systems, et cetera. So, I mean, maybe not 12 months, maybe 18 months. Our goal is to get us onto a global harmonized tech stack, and really work toward that as a way to clean up our data, right? Get the right data in from the right systems in the right ways through our consolidation of our tools and our processes. I don't know if we'll make the 6 to 12 month mark, but we're going to try.
All right, gentleman from Texas, thank you for the question. So, all right, guys, so this has been a fascinating conversation, and I can't thank you guys enough for spending your time here and sharing such valuable insights. I personally enjoyed interacting, getting to know you. I'm sure the audience did as well. So please, a round of applause for our amazing panelists. So with that, we get to find out who our peers are, and you get to meet amazing partners from Tredence, Avanade, and At Scale, as well as a few friendly Bricksters. So,
do you want to take guesses of how long you've been here?
Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was at the happy hour, so we'll do that.
All right.
I'll collect the over/under on that. Don't worry. So thank you for being a great audience, great questions. Sorry.
North
Terrace. Oh, it's in the North Terrace. Thank you, David. So we're going to go point towards that, and we'll just follow David, I guess. Yeah? Thank you guys for being here. Thank you so much.